Good evening and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council. It is the responsibility of the Planning Commission to consider and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. Actions taken tonight on conditional use permits are final unless appealed to the City Council in writing within 5 days. And any actions taken tonight on final development plan design review or minor amendments are final. Any recommendations made on preliminary subdivision plan requests tonight will be referred to the City Council for final actions at the third council meeting of this month or at the first council meeting of next month if associated with a zoning or major amendment. Any recommendations made on rezoning requests, major amendments, future land use amendments, or ordinance amendments tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the first council meeting of next month. Council meetings are held at Carnegie Town Hall and are televised. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent agenda and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, Planning staff and the Planning Commission apply the following criteria. First, the request conforms with the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Second, Planning staff recommends approval of the request. Third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance. For the regular agenda, the following normal public hearing procedure will be followed for each item. By first requesting planning staff to present a brief report on that item. Second, the petitioner or a representative will be requested to come forward and make a statement or answer questions. After the petitioner has spoken, anyone from the audience who wishes to address the agenda item shall be recognized. Then the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anyone addressing the Planning Commission move to the podium microphone and identify themselves for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask that you please either turn off or silence your electronic devices. This meeting is being telecast on CityLink and will be rebroadcast Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 10 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation. Good evening. Welcome to Carnegie Hall. Before we get started, I think everybody's aware this is our first meeting where we have changed the time to 6 o'clock. We hope that that is convenient for you folks, and we're certainly open to any comments as far as the time we've selected. I think other than one of our commissioners, it looks to me like it's working out just fine for everybody. Hi, Jesse. At this time, the Planning Commission will approve the consent and regular agenda items.
Mr. Chair, I'm standing
Yes,
down.
All right. We have one commission member going to excuse herself from the consent agenda items. I will now read the consent agenda items. Number 1 would be approval of the October 3rd, 2012 meetings of the regular meeting. Number 2 would be plats. Number 3 would be an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls amending revised ordinance of the city by permitting clubhouses. Number 4 is an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls amending the 2008 revised subdivision regulations of the City of Sioux Falls. Number 5 would be a rezone the RC, which would be the Recreation Conservation District, to the S Institutional District for allowed uses at 2201 West 95th Street. Number 6 would be a major amendment in the Sanford Sports Complex Planned Development District to adjust sub-area boundaries
located at the northeast corner of North Westport Avenue and West Benson Road. Number 7 would be a conditional use permit in the I-1 Light Industrial District to allow motor vehicle sales at 1213 East Rice Street. Number 8 would be a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to construct a gas station and convenience store on a site greater than 1 acre at 1400 North Minnesota Avenue. Number 9 would be a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to construct a gas station and convenience store on a site greater than 1 acre at 3001 North Louise Avenue. Number 10 would be a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow motor vehicle sales in a commercial parking lot at 1901 South Minnesota Avenue. Number 11 would be a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to construct a retail store on a site greater than 1 acre at 2214 West 41st Street. Number 12 would be a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Commercial District to construct an indoor recreation facility at 209 West Anchor Lane. Number 13 would be a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Commercial District to construct a bar, restaurant, and banquet facility with on-sale alcohol, a parcel greater than 1 acre, and a building containing more than 15,000 square feet of area. Number 14 would be a conditional use permit in the RS2 residential district to change the use of an existing building to a duplex at 826 West 2nd Street. Number 15 would be a minor amendment to Subarea A, Orchard Heights Planned Development District, to reduce required front yard setback from 30 feet to 28.5 feet for a replat at 2805 South Orchard Circle. Are there any objections from any of the audience on any of the items listed on the consent agenda items? Commissioners, is there anything on the consent agenda item that we would like moved to the regular agenda?
Mr. Chair, I would
Jesse.
like to move item number 4, the ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls amending to revise subdivision regulations, to the regular agenda.
We have a motion to move item number 4 to the regular agenda. Commissioners, is there anything else that we'd like to address?
I'll second the motion.
Seeing none, we've got a motion to move number 4 to the regular agenda. We have a second. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. We will move, if you are here for consent agenda items, that has been approved. If your item has been not removed. Oh, wow.
Hang on a second, folks.
Wait a minute. We've approved the consent agenda items. but we haven't voted yet. All in favor of the consent agenda items signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? If your item was on the consent agenda, you're now free to leave if you so choose to. We will now move to the regular agenda. Staff, is there any change in the regular agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Steve Randall representing staff this evening. Items 16 and 20, we have requests to defer those to the December 5th Planning Commission meeting.
It's 16 and 20, Steve?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to accept the regular agenda items?
So moved.
We have a motion, and I think I heard a second.
I second that, adding item 16 and 20 as deferred, and,
As deferred.
and item 4 from the consent to the regular agenda.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes. We will start with item number 4. Jeff, I believe that's your item.
Thank you. Jeffrey Schmidt, representing city planning staff this evening. Just to clarify, number 16 was the plan for the tax increment financing, and that was deferred. And item number 20 was the conditional use for storage facilities on East 26th Street. So anybody that was here for those items, those were deferred. And then the first 15 items have been approved by Planning Commission and either are going forward to City Council or will be able to go and get their building permits. So now we will move on to item number 4 on the Planning Commission, coming off consent and going to the regular agenda. Item number 4 is in regards to the subdivision ordinance. The subdivision ordinance is being proposed for some changes as we move forward to City Council. The purpose of the subdivision ordinance is to regulate the subdivision of land. It has a specific process where you have to do a preliminary plan, a development engineering plan, and then plat your ground, and then you can actually start putting utilities in and developing your property. That's the subdivision of the property. This last revision really took place back in July of 2008, where we did significant revisions. This revision that you see in front of us right now is in regards to how the improvements get placed within the subdivision. The city attorney for the City of Sioux Falls is here tonight, along with other city engineers, to give you some overview of what they're proposing. And this has already gone through contractors and initial review prior to coming tonight. So that's staff report and the applicants here to discuss this.
Would there be any questions for Jeff at this time?
Jeff, people may have seen this had some, was in the newspaper and had some media around it. As it relates to some subdivisions that don't have the final improvements done, specifically a final overlay, asphalt overlay would be just one thing.
Correct.
And it appears that in working with several developers, we were able to get that taken care of. But in the event of economic situation returning to what it was.
Yeah, and I think the city engineer is going to do a little bit of overview on that to bring,
Okay.
again, the public up to speed so that they understand why he's bringing this proposal forward.
Perfect, thank you.
So, thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jeff. This is quite an honor to have the city engineer come join our ranks this evening. Hello, Mr. Heavey.
Good evening. I'm the one that's honored. Chad Heavey with the Engineering Division of Public Works. I'll apologize now because I will speak longer than 5 minutes, but I feel it's necessary to, I don't see an easy way to explain this, so maybe I'll shoot for 10 minutes if I can.
Chad, is that our punishment for making you come? You're going to make us sit here?
No, this is going to be educational, I hope.
Perfect.
Okay. All right, tonight, 3 things. I want to provide you an overview of the current construction process and subdivisions, give you an update on the status of our existing subdivisions, and then talk about the proposed construction process. First of all, who builds new streets in the city of Sioux Falls? Arterial streets, like this year's 85th Street expansion, or Louise Avenue from 85th down to 95th. That's an arterial street that's built publicly by the city through the capital program. 90th Street, which extends east and west of Louise Avenue, is a collector street that was constructed privately and then dedicated to the city. So the arterial streets are constructed by the city. The majority of the time, the collector and local streets, or the local streets that are in front of your house, are built by the developers and then dedicated to the city. The risk to the city and its taxpayers is when a developer wants to develop land, commits to construct the required public improvements, and then does not fulfill that commitment. And in the end, the commitments need to be completed. When I talk about public improvements, it's just what you see on the screen. It's the underground utilities, the curb and gutter, the street surfacing, the street lights, and any other products or activities required for the construction of that street. In front of you now is the steps in the land development process that are discussed in detail in the Subdivision Ordinance. Today I'm going to focus on the Plat process and the associated assurance agreement. And the reason is the potential risk to the city and its taxpayers is when the right-of-way is dedicated during the platting process. A map, or a plat, is a map of a piece of ground subdivided into lots, parcels, tracts, or blocks. It includes streets, right-of-way, easements, and all irrevocable offers of dedication. It is required when land is divided for purpose of sale, transfer of ownership, or in creating a building site prior to the issuance of a building permit. This is language from the Subdivision Ordinance requiring assurances for public improvements. And to summarize, it says no plat of a subdivision will be approved unless the required public improvements have been constructed prior to plat approval, or the developer has signed an assurance agreement committing to construct the public improvements within a specified period. The city has required this assurance since 1980. At that time, it was just a letter of assurance. In 1993, it was replaced with an actual assurance agreement. It is signed by the developer and the mayor, and the developer is required to file this agreement with the County Register of Deeds. Once the agreement is executed, the developer has committed to construct all of the public improvements. And for the majority of subdivisions, and until just recently, this document has served the city and its taxpayers well. However, the economic downturn that occurred a few years ago exposed the one weakness of the agreement, and that is there is no financial security to fund the improvements if the developer is unable to. In the fall of 2009, we conducted a thorough review of all subdivisions to see if they were in compliance with their insurance agreements. Then in the spring of 2010, we began dialogue with the out-of-compliance developers. During this dialogue, we notified them of their status and requested an updated schedule as to when the improvements would be complete. And the most common response we heard at that time was, when we start selling lots again, and that's understandable. So we knew there was an issue there. We went to the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board and formed a subcommittee to start looking at several issues. And it wasn't just about getting the subdivisions finished or financial securities. We also wanted to talk about the entire subdivision construction process, timeframes, warranty periods, inspections, testing. And in the end, we wanted that construction process to be very similar to the construction process for public improvements. The subcommittee had several meetings and discussed many topics. In May and October of 2011, we sent letters again to the out-of-compliance developers, again requesting a schedule as to when their commitments would be fulfilled. And at that time, the responses were still the same. In February of 2012, we filed a notice of claim of interest on 1,050 vacant lots in subdivisions that were out of compliance. The purpose of the notice of claim of interest was to forewarn potential lot buyers of the uncompleted improvements and that the potential existed they could be assessed for the cost of those improvements. When somebody purchases a lot and builds a home or buys a home, they expect the public improvements adjoining their lot are complete. And we currently receive probably 1 or 2 calls a week from whether it's title companies asking about these notice of claims of interest. In July of this year, we sent certified letters to the out-of-compliance developers. We requested a meeting and notified them that the subdivisions had to be in compliance by September 30th of this year. During the meetings, we communicated what they needed to do in their subdivision to be in compliance. They could complete the improvements. They could provide a financial security for the improvements that weren't completed. They could agree to a suspension of building permits or provide other assurances that we would approve that the work would be completed. In July of 2012, there was 30 subdivisions out of compliance, which equates to about 21 miles of roads with a value to complete of $10.2 million. After the October or the September 30th deadline, as of October 9th, there was 12 subdivisions out of compliance, equates to 10.4 miles of roads with an estimated to complete of $4.8 million. Okay, in April, the IRAB subcommittee again began working, and the goal was to develop a mechanism to protect the city and its taxpayers in future subdivisions. The subcommittee was made up of developers, home builders, consulting engineers, contractors, city staff, and then representatives from title companies, surety companies, and financial institutions. Several meetings were held between April and July, and I have to thank everyone involved for their participation and hours of talk and discussion spent on this topic. So the product of the subcommittee is what's in front of you tonight. It is the subdivision construction agreement, and the proposal is to replace the current assurance agreement with this document. It is a combination of language from the current assurance agreement and from the city's general conditions for public improvements, which is the process to construct public improvements in the capital program. This agreement requires a performance security to ensure all public improvements are completed, and then a warranty security to warrant those improvements. In front of you now is the state law that references financial securities in subdivision construction. This is what gives us the authority to do this. The next slide just talks about the requirements of performance and warranty securities in subdivisions is very common in the region. They are required in Rapid City, Sioux City, West Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Lincoln, and many others across the region. With the new agreement, developers will have 4 options for constructing their subdivisions. Option 1 is to complete all of the public improvements, let the warranty period expire, and then plat. Under this option, the developer does not have to provide a performance or warranty security. However, the time period from when the construction begins to when platting could occur and lots be sold could range from 2 to 3 years. So I don't see this being an option that many will choose. Option 2 is to complete all of the public improvements and then plat. Under this option, the developer does not have to provide a performance security, but would need to provide a warranty security. And this, I think, is an option that some may choose to use. Option 3 is to begin construction and plat sometime during that construction period. Under this option, at platting, the developer would provide a performance security for the public improvements not yet complete, and then a warranty security. So I'll give you an example. The developer is going to construct an 8-lot cul-de-sac, and the public improvements are estimated to cost $100,000. So under this scenario, the developer has completed all the improvements except the top lift of asphalt, which you talked about earlier, and now he wants to plat and sell the lots. So what he does, and back up, the top lift of asphalt we'll just estimate at $15,000 to complete. So at platting, the developer would provide the city a performance security for the $15,000 of top lift that's not yet installed and proceed with platting. Option 3 is an option I think that many of the developers will use. Option 4 is to plat before the construction begins, and under this same option, the developer would provide a performance security for all of the public improvements and a warranty security. So using that example, instead of providing a performance security for $15,000, he would now have to provide a performance security for the full $100,000, and then he could proceed with platting. And I'm not going to take you, there's 27 sections of the subdivision construction agreement, and I'm just going to highlight a few of them. There is declarations at the beginning. The declarations include that, first of all, the agreement will apply to all public improvements for subdivisions. The declarations include that the developer wishes to develop land in the City of Sioux Falls, and the city wishes to prevent the use of public funds to complete the private development. Next slide.
Chad, can I just say, we got this yesterday, and it's available online, I believe, to anybody that wants to see it. Is that once it's approved, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Section 1 just lists some definitions. Section 2 talks about the time period for construction, which is 2 years. There is an ability to extend that. Section 3 talks about the developer must obtain a construction permit. Section 4 talks about the performance security, and it's just like what I said before. We will not approve a final plat until the improvements are complete, or they can provide a performance security to the city. The options for the security are an escrow account, a bond, or an irrevocable letter of credit. Section 5 talks about that we will allow reductions in this performance security. Once certain aspects of the work are done, we will issue a reduction. 6 talks about acceptance and warranty periods. The utility acceptance, water main, sewer, storm sewer, sump pump collection, there's a 2-year warranty. The final acceptance will include the surfacing base, basically the curb and gutter, the asphalt. That'll be a 1-year warranty, and those warranties are warranties that are currently in place. So we're not increasing the amount of that warranty period. Section 7 talks about the warranty security. Back to our $100,000 example, they would have to provide a warranty security in the amount of 10% or $10,000 to warrant those improvements until the period is elapsed. Section 8 talks a little bit more about the warranty inspection process. And 9 through 16 is just more about authority of the city engineer, the materials that are used, and we won't go through those. 17 through 20, more of the same. And a lot of these sections come right out of our general conditions for public improvements. We've just moved them into here. 22 through 27, again, talks about protection of alley gutters and fillets, responsibilities of snow removal, traffic maintenance, so on and so forth. And the final piece of this, similar to today's current assurance agreement, the new agreement will be signed by the developer and the mayor. The agreement will be in the Subdivision Ordinance. The agreement has been approved by the Infrastructure Review Advisory Board. The Home Builders Association of the Sioux Empire supports the adoption of this agreement. The agreement was presented to the Public Services Committee of the City Council in October, and they recommended it be brought to this body and then the City Council. The agreement will prevent the use of public funds to complete private development. The plan is to take this document to the City Council in December. And in closing, I want to thank you for your time tonight, and I will attempt to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions.
Jesse?
A couple questions for you, Chad. Number one, how does this affect, we constantly talk about affordable housing and that we make it more unaffordable all the time. So how does this affect our Affordable Housing Association, Habitat for Humanity, their ability to secure these bonds? Because I know there's Habitat neighborhoods that have taken several years before they're completed, and I think that would that be a financial hardship on them?
Well, I'll make some assumptions here. I've heard from the industry is that if you want to get a construction bond or a performance bond, it's probably going to cost you anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5% of the value. And so if we go back to our example where you completed all the improvements and then platted, and you had the $15,000 left for the top lift of asphalt. And if you assume that you can get a performance bond for 4%, which is it's going to cost you $600 in this example, which equates to $75 per lot.
So realistically, is that the most common way you see it being done?
The bonding?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So you don't think lots are sold prior to any infrastructure being done or is that a days gone by scenario? There was a time when lots were sold off of a piece of paper and not a stitch of dirt's been turned.
And that could happen as we move forward, but the land is not sold until it's platted. And so that is the trigger, because if you plat land, if you plat lots out, you have to plat right away.
Okay.
So moving forward, when somebody comes to plat, we will look at the subdivision and see what public improvements are yet to be complete. So it is possible that somebody's going to go out, bring us the construction plan, which is the final plan that we would approve. We'll approve it, give them a construction permit. They're going to go out, they're on their private property, they're going to grade it, they're going to put in the utilities, the gravel, they're going to put in curb and gutter, they're going to put in the bottom lift of asphalt, and then they're going to come in and plat to subdivide and then sell the lot. So when they come into plat is when we'll trigger the financial security. Now the other answer to say is how is this going to affect affordable housing is it's whatever the market will bear. What I gave you is just one example. Whether somebody pays 2% for a bond or 10%, it's going to vary on a lot of things. Their financial stability, their credit. So I'm just assuming 2 to 5%.
Okay.
Jesse? Chad, that's a very, very good explanation. I know you and your department have worked a long time on this, and I have participated in some of the IRAB meetings. If this goes to council in the month of December, and then if approved, it goes through a process of a time period, when does this take effect? Does this take effect going forward, or does this take effect going backwards?
We talked about it this morning at the IRAB meeting. So it did get brought up. It was a question that was asked. If we go to the city council on the first and third meeting of December, and I don't know what those dates are, let's just say it's December 15th, and it would get published on that Friday, then there'd be a 20-day period before it would go into effect. So it'll go into effect probably in sometime in mid-January, and it'll be looking forward.
Okay.
So you're not going to go back to these guys and make them get a surety?
No. When we started this whole process, there was really two pieces to this. Looking back at what's already been started and then looking forward to protect the city in the future. And so I can tell you, though, we talked about the 18 subdivisions that have come into compliance since July. Some of those to come into compliance have provided us a financial security. So some have, but we're not going back and changing anything that that was started, prior to this.
Okay.
It'll be moving forward.
Chad, a question I've had, and having done some development, I think what I'm hearing is platting is what's going to trigger this. As a developer, I can go out, I can acquire the ground, I can get my plans all approved, I can get a construction permit, I can build my roads, I can put in my sewer, and the question I've had is about water taps. Do I need to be platted before water taps are approved, or can I do water taps at the time I'm doing sewer?
What you'll submit to us is and I think it's even a requirement of the subdivision construction agreement, is if you choose to start construction first before platting, you have to provide us a preliminary plat, which would show the lot layout, which would allow us to address the lots, which then would allow us to install the taps for the water main at the time the water main goes in. So
when they're doing the sewers, typically when they do the water taps, it's the least expensive.
Yep.
It's the right way to do it.
But we would have
you
that
do not have to be platted to do that.
No, but we would have and we do this now, they'll send us a preliminary plat. It's just the front sheet that shows the lot layout, and we address off that.
I could go in there, put in my curb and sidewalk, or put in my curb and gutter. I can put in 2 lifts of blacktop, then come in for platting, and I'm under no obligation to have to do anything.
All you would have to provide would then be a warranty security. So in this case, let's say you're building this cul-de-sac, it was $100,000. We would want you to provide a warranty security in the amount of $10,000, 10% of the total improvements. You would go and get a warranty bond from a bonding company, and we'll just say again, we'll use that. It'd cost you anywhere from 2 to 5% of the $10,000.
It's not unusual to spend $1 million real quick on some of this stuff. Are you then saying that a warranty bond would require 10% of the total work done?
If you went and spent $1 million, the total improvements were $1 million, you'd have to provide a warranty security for 10% of that, which would be $100,000. And so you'd go to your bonding company, and if it was 4%, it'd cost you $4,000 to get that $100,000 bond.
I didn't realize we were having a problem with warranty work, but obviously that has also been a problem.
Well, if the developer is unable to complete the subdivision, as we've run into now, let's say they complete it, and there are some issues that the asphalt breaks up, the curb and gutter settles or cracks. That's an expense, and that's the same way we warranty all of our capital projects the same way.
Now, other than spending the money or acquiring a bond, there is other ways to get your comfort level. Most developers work through a lending institution. They've made their arrangements for financing. I think I heard something about a letter of credit from the bank saying, hey, they've got the money. That can and will suffice versus having to acquire the bond.
Yeah, and I should probably comment that the group felt that there should be many options to provide this security. What I've heard through the financial institutions commented that in today's economy, the irrevocable letter of credit may not be what is used today, but 5 years from now it may be something that's used. So, yeah, the letter of credit, but I think there's a cost to provide that, and then the bond, and then if you choose to do the escrow route, you know, if you're going to spend $100,000, you have to put $100,000 into a different account, and there is a way that you can draw down on that. But I think what will be used mostly at this time will be a performance or a warranty bond.
Okay. Is there any issues out there other than the second lift of blacktop? And I'm just thinking of the construction period on this. That's companies are hired to do that. They're either paid or not paid, but a lot certainly isn't ready for sale unless you've got sewer and water to it. I'm not sure how that could or would affect the city.
There is some areas out there where there has been lots platted and there's nothing there. But the majority of the improvements that aren't done today are the top lift.
I have a hard time somebody couldn't buy the lot to build a house if nothing's been done yet. But
I don't think they'll issue a building permit without utilities. Is that correct?
Chad, thank you. That answered some of the questions I've had, and it might sound like Greek to a lot of people, but I've been to some of the meetings. I appreciate the city's position on that and what you guys have been kind of working through, and there's been a lot of work put into it. Thank you.
I thank you for your comments. I would say there's been a very spirited discussions throughout this whole process, but I think we've reached a good spot to be in.
I noticed you brought a young fellow with you tonight. Is that the enforcer? Is that your fellow that goes out and checks these developments?
That is Kurt Peppel. He's done the majority of the work on this. He was out today checking on things, so I know you like him.
Absolutely.
You may not like him in the future, but
I love it. Chad, thank you. Would there be any other questions for Chad? Thank you for coming down tonight and walking through that with us. We appreciate it. Any other comments or in regards to item number 4? If not, I would entertain commission action.
Make a motion to approve item number 4 of the subdivision ordinance.
Have a motion. Would there be a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I think we've talked it out pretty thoroughly. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. That will bring us to number 16 has been deferred. That would bring us to 17 has been deferred. 17 is up. This does not look like Dave Loveland.
No, I have a little more hair, but not much more. I'm Brent O'Neill with the Community Development Department. I'll be speaking to item 17 in just a moment.
Brent, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We've deferred item number 16, which is the details regarding the TIF. And we're going to talk about the boundaries.
Yes.
Can we bring some questions about the whole project as a whole forward? Okay.
Yeah, our intent tonight with the deferral of the plan was still to introduce the project and open it up.
Thank you.
We're there. Thanks, Steve. We're here tonight to talk about the creation of a tax increment district in the Uptown area, the Phillips to the Falls area, Sioux Falls. This area might look familiar to some of you. It's certainly been a hot topic downtown this area, and also had a TIF district and a previous action by the Planning Commission about a year ago. In that area, you see the existing TIF 12. The area in question is still an underdeveloped area of about 5.7 acres in size. You know, guys, I apologize. We do have the wrong presentation uploaded.
You're going to have to do it on your own then.
Well, if that's the case, I can
We've
do it
heard
that
you
way.
before. You're all good.
All right. Well, this was just a quick summary of how TIF districts work. Again, we create a tax increment district, a base value, the current value of the property is frozen in time. Any increases to that property value over time can be used to fund a project. You know what I might do, Steve? Can we flip it over to the projector? Yeah. I wanted to talk about the site just a little bit. I got an aerial there from several years ago of the old railroad yard that went through there. Beginning in the mid-2000s, the city took ownership of that, did the Phillips to the Falls project. That property in discussion here was subject to a city RFP. It was city land, and we wanted to redevelop it and put it in the hands of private developers. As part of that process, we created Tax Increment District 8 in 2007. That was dissolved in 2012 with the creation of Tax Increment District in 2011 with the creation of Tax Increment District number 12. Real quickly, just a snapshot, kind of the before and after the Phillips to the Falls. Just to the east side, the left side of Phillips Avenue. On the picture on the right is the property we're looking at as well. To look at this district in a little bit more detail, right now it really has nominal value. There's a small chunk of land that has some value. The majority of it is city-owned, has no assessable value. So we are looking at getting this back on the tax rolls in addition to supporting the development. Based on some development prospects for this property, we are looking at about a $14 million increase in taxable value of the property. At today's current mill rates, that amounts to a $280,000 increase, if you will, in the annual potential property taxes. Like a lot of our TIFs.
You goofed up, but I just want to be sure I understand and follow this. What you're saying right now is there's $33,000 worth of taxable value, or is that the taxes?
That's the taxable value. It's just a very small
But that is not the taxes. The taxes would be a portion of that.
Yeah, their taxes would be.
So the 280 is what you anticipate being the tax amount
Yes.
after the project is complete.
Yes.
So if I understand this correctly, you'll take the existing taxes, and let's say it's $3,000, subtract that from the going to be taxes.
Yeah.
So that creates for you roughly $277,000 a year.
Yes.
That's the question, what happens to that $277,000? I apologize for interrupting, but I just want to be sure I follow this correctly.
Yeah, those would be the new taxes, and those what we would be using to support any investment or use of TIF into the project as a whole. Those expenses that are included in our plan, like many of our TIFs, environmental, especially downtown, is that number one issue. Those costs are always higher and sometimes significantly higher because of basically a century's worth of pollution in the downtown area. There are certain capital expenses included in the plan as well, and I'll get to that in a little bit later on, but in an overview, they can all be lumped into those two categories. We did divide the site into two areas. We're calling it one the north site, one the south site, the north site in blue, the south site in yellow. And we've kind of categorized the expenses that we see being eligible, about 3.7 on the north side, 2.1 on the south side. To look at the north site, which is really the impetus of bringing this tax increment district forward tonight, is brought forward by Lloyd Companies as part of a response to the 2007 RFP. They want to look at the property north of 4th, south of 3rd, and then basically the large red building on the right on that plan view, and then the elevation of what the building would look like on the bottom. A 5-story building, 100,000 feet plus, and it's going to be a mixed-use building designed for retail on the first floor, residential above, perhaps some things in the short term with some retail on the first floor as well. The development plan itself, which is again that part that we're bringing forward next month, talks about supporting this mixed-use development there, both those north and south sites. It really does, with the pollution there in the ground, it is difficult to develop. I think that's evidenced by the fact that we, are looking back 5 years to the RFP and the original TIF, and it's taken us to this point to really have the developer bring a project forward that is really feasible enough to go forward. Again, the environmental cleanup is a big part. It was an old rail yard with all the bad stuff that goes with rail yards, including some of the operations of the adjacent properties. I know there's some other areas of town where like battery cracking was a big practice. In this area, I know there's one area that there was some of that battery issue as well. The infrastructure improvements are important in this area. With the railroad, there's some incomplete or imperfect, for sure, road improvements. 3rd Street really functions a lot more just like a big chunk of asphalt. It's not striped, it's not marked, it's not really capable of holding the parking and so forth that it needs. But another big element of this infrastructure improvements are going to be drainage improvements. And if you've been up to the area and paid any attention to the topography, it does lie at the bottom of the hill. There's a lot of water that drains down by this area and through this area. And really there are probably, I've heard different figures, but it's generally between 18 and 25 acres of water in the surrounding area really drains down through this area and through this site. So there's going to be drainage improvements, one, just to help the development get the water through and past its site, but really supporting those 25 acres and making sure that water's not backing up, that water from those acres can get directly to the Big Sioux River. The plan accounts for about $25 million in private investment. 17 of that is going to go into the north site, and then another 8 or 9 in the south site. TIF could go out through 20 years. We expect the participation to go close to that 20 years. We're kind of projecting an 18, 19, 20-year range on this TIF. Just some final notes. We are asking and bringing this TIF forward to use tax increment financing to offset some of the excessive site costs. This is what we refer to as a developer TIF, meaning that the city will not be forwarding or fronting any funds to it, that the developer needs to complete the improvements up front with its own financing and be reimbursed through the TIF proceeds over time. A couple other points, as far as the downtown plan go and the city's comprehensive plan, the project does fit within those standards. We do draft the plan in compliance with TIF statute. Just kind of a couple final notes. The plan will now come to the Planning Commission in December. We do want to schedule the boundary early December, so we'll be able to bring both the plan and the boundary in December. Tonight what we're looking for is the Planning Commission support on bringing the boundary forward. The boundary establishes the TIF and the base value. With that, the developer team is here. I can answer questions. They would certainly be available to answer those as well.
I think we'll probably have some questions for you, maybe right now. Does anybody have any questions for Brent? I know a question I have is, we've established the differential in taxes, roughly $277,000 a year. Do you go through a computation that would determine the maximum amount of TIF money that would be available to this project based on that assumption?
Yeah, and we try to be conservative. That's been our approach as long as I've been working on TIFs for the city. You know, we want our estimates to be reasonable, but we don't want them to be overly inflated, because we want, you know, it's better to have more TIF revenue than not enough. So we've always estimated on the conservative side that 280 or roughly 280,000 is really a first year, or the first year the increment comes in. That's our projection. You know, there are various ways and methods of kind of figuring out what that might be over time. You know, the developer has proposed a 2% increase.
Based
annually.
on this assumption, could the TIF have been $10 million? Is it the calculation you went through to say, hey, here's the maximum amount that could be approved for this particular TIF?
Yes. One thing that goes into that is, you know, whether or not financing costs are involved, if we're spreading out the value of a TIF over time. But the maximum amount of the TIF is in excess of the amount that the developer has asked for. The cumulative
now you
amount.
threw me. The maximum amount of the TIF is in excess of what the developer's requested.
Sure, I can clarify that. The 280,000, and I'll just, for simplicity, I'll take the 280,000 times 20 years, gets you to $4.8 million.
Yes.
You know, the developer's asking for over $1 million less than that. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the cumulative value that, or the cumulative increment that we expect the tax district to bring in as far as revenue is well above any amount that we would actually be reimbursing.
And maybe, not to get you confused either, the amount of the TIF we're looking at is $5.8 million. And if I multiplied 280 times 20, well, that'd come up to 5.6, or pretty much close to the 5 million.
I hear you. I'm speaking from memory, so I'm going to actually pull
I'm not
my...
saying that to trip you up. A thought that I've had, and maybe why you're going to get some questions, and maybe this wants to be talked about a little bit more, is the number of TIFs we've been looking at here in the last 6 months or so. And what I had to stop and myself think about is, this is taxpayer money. That $277,000 is what we're basically asking the taxpayers to do is, hey, help subsidize this project to help get this up and going. And the answer to that might be great. And I know one of the answers is, well, without it, nothing's going to happen. But in the past history, what we've heard about TIFs is that it had to be used for hard-to-develop properties because of terrain, because of topography, because of whatever. And the last couple we looked at terrain and went, yeah, this probably won't get developed without it. Mm-hmm. The other was soil contamination was a big deal. I know you've mentioned soil contamination on this one, but out of the $5.8 million, I think there's only about $1 million plugged in there for remediation and soil. And so I sit and I go, well, should we maximize this TIF because of that reason, or should we provide the TIF to take care of the reason that this is going to be hard to develop? And that's what I'm struggling with just a little bit. I know this is a arrow in your quiver, but that same thing being said, these tax dollars, 65 cents goes to the school. 19% goes to the county, and I think the city gets 16% of this $5.8 million that they're not going to receive for the next 20 years. And I'm struggling a little bit going, hey, are we taking a good look at the expenses that are going into this? Are these normal expenses? Are they above normal expenses? And that's where I'm struggling a little bit with the original definition to do TIFs versus what I kind of see happening a little bit. And I'm not saying that's wrong, Brent. I don't know. It's a lot of money that the taxpayers are going to end up paying.
Sure. No, I think those are fair points. I think to the second point regarding the expenses, after we had the briefing and those concerns were raised, I think that's something that we wanted to address through the deferral process was to really scrutinize those a little bit more, let you ask us the questions, give us some time to respond, or give the developer some time to respond. So I think, without diving too deep into those, I would like to take that time. I will say that, there are some unique conditions here. In particular, some of the infrastructure is interesting. Like, for example, 4th Street was never ever really planned as a city street, but it really functions well. It supports downtown. It supports the connections to Phillips Avenue. It's a very costly street. It's I don't have the exact number in front of me, but just that half block that's complete already between Main and then the mid block of Main to Phillips. I'm going to ballpark about $500,000, and I know I'm off slightly one way or the other, but that's a very, very expensive road to get in with some grading challenges, getting the drainage through there and so forth. So that's one of the reasons why you might see a little bit different than those very pure environmental questions.
When we're given a sheet that shows how the money is being spent, is that a swag? Is that are these numbers that you've went out and got bids for?
No.
Or are we going, hey, we estimate redoing the street's going to run $100,000. Let's put that number in here. And what I worry about is, are we taking the max and then going, okay, now let's get this to equal the max?
Sure. They're as far as bids, they've not been bid. They're estimates with, I would call, just a high confidence interval. They're not exact. We don't know how they'll come in, but they've really. They've been the figures that the developer is using in its own pro forma to secure its financing. So it is at, let's just call it that 90% plus level of confidence. There are a few things we look at when we look at a TIF. One is what are the eligible expenses and what are the sum total of those. But on the flip side, what is really important for us to look at, and I really think it's our duty to look at before we bring it forward, is just a bigger financial picture of how TIF fits into the overall project as far as reasonable need. Does it really, go to those excessive costs or excessive difficulty in doing the project? Does it address a gap that does, but for filling that gap, the project doesn't go forward? And third is, and it's probably a little bit more subjective, but in addition to the need or the gap, is the request reasonable and is it appropriate? And one of the measures we look at on those, particularly in the downtown, is what we call participation rate, which is of the total project costs, what portion of those total project costs is the TIF participating in? So to give you an example, just on the Phillips Avenue Loft project, that the one is the catalyst for this, the participation rate is about right about 15 or 16%. It's typically 15 is the standard we use. We have made exceptions for projects that are of a large scale, that have environmental costs, that provide some sort of city benefit. 4th Street, for example. So I believe we've gone as high as maybe 20 or 21%. This is going to again be in that 15, 16% range. So those are some measures that we look at as far as that feasibility.
Brent, at the briefing and you weren't there, we were led to believe that this was not a viable project without this TIF being approved. Do you concur with that?
I do. you know, I think on any TIF or any project like this, you know, the actual amount, you know, could be off a little bit, but you know, if we're looking at a $3 million TIF here, you know, that's a big hole that it fills in a project. And to say that TIF would be taken away and there's $3 million that no longer can support this project would not go forward.
When you say 3, the TIF is 5.8.
Yeah, but the north, he's talking about the north section that we're talking about.
I guess I'm looking at both sides.
Sure, yeah, and that's actually my confusion before. I was speaking just to the north side as well.
I appreciate that. This is a project we all want to see go. And I say that sincerely. This will make that. It's hard for me to sit here and say this is not a viable project unless the city puts some money into it. Now, if that's the case, maybe we need to look at the project and going, gosh, if it won't stand on its own without public input. But I'm sure you and the developer have looked at this and give it some thought. But it almost feels like you get a little bit of a gun to our head.
Can I make a comment about that? And I think, you want to?
Just real quick, I just wanted to clarify real thing, because Jesse brought up the point at the beginning. We want to see if we can discuss the boundary a little bit. We can discuss the plan, but they've already deferred the plan, and so how much we want to discuss and debate the merits of the plan, which is already has to be deferred, or unless you want to vote on it, but I'd assumed you didn't. I hope there's some questions on the item that you're going to discuss tonight. So I just wanted to...
Jeff, I do too.
Sure. Yeah, I wanted you to go back to the Planning Commission to see if you had questions on the boundary versus the plan.
To me, we're talking about next month already.
I think we're giving Brent a little lead on what he might expect next month.
And I appreciate that. I do want to, if I still could comment, because I do think your question, Mr. Dunlap, does relate a little bit to tonight's action, though, because it goes to you know, whether TIF should be used at all or not, and it is our recommendation that it be used. And I think to answer your question directly, you know, if you were to take this exact same building and put it on the edge of town, where land is cheaper, where you know, they don't have some of these costs, it probably might be more feasible than it is downtown. So I think it's the location really that has generated the need for this type of incentive in this case.
That's fair. Jesse, did you have a comment or two?
I do, Brent. I always have not so much confusion because I think I've got it figured out over my years of sitting here, but why we include more land in the TIF than what is actually being developed. And that's where I kind of say then, well, if we have to include more land than what is actually being done, how does it pencil out? How can you make it work if it's not just the land that we're discussing?
Sure. You know, and that is something that we want to get a little more clarity to you on for the next meeting. But what we did in this case, the north site, the south site, that south site, south of 4th, remains an extremely high priority development site for the city. We know because of the north site what some of those, you know, environmental costs are going to be on the south site. We know what some of those improvement costs are going to be. So it was really our attempt, knowing that we fully expect a similar development to happen on the the south site, that it made more sense just to include these together. You know, for example, the drainage issue I talked about, you know, is an issue with the south side as well. And we felt that, you know, that if those drainage costs are going to be, you know, on the north part of the site, that we should at least have some ways of capturing that particular south site. We also are getting ahead of the game a little bit, or being proactive and just ensuring that if and when that site happens, that we've got those costs already included in a TIF plan and can move it forward a little bit easier.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Jeff?
I do. Again, so we don't even know what's going to go on the south site, but we're allocating costs not knowing anything about anything. How do we do that?
Sure. We do know more about what the ground is like, what some of those costs are going to be. Is the level of certainty on the south site as good as the level of certainty on the north site? No, but we do feel confident. When we first issued the RFP, all the environmental testing went from basically the tip of that south point all the way up to 2nd Street. So I know there are several books that thick with environmental reports. So we've got an idea of what some of those costs are going to be.
And the city has covered a significant amount of those costs already up to this point.
The city has done some, part of the whole mitigation process of getting Phillips to the Falls in required some of that, but there still is some substantial, and where we really expect, where we really know that some of the issues are, are subsurface. It's one of these sites, as a green field with grass growing on it, yeah, it's fine for people to run across it. Once we start disturbing the soil, getting down, there's going to be soil that has to be treated, has to be hauled off site.
And maybe I'm getting back to where we're not discussing boundaries, but I'm going to ask the questions anyway, because I want to know by the next time what the answers are. So, but again, I asked it on the last TIF that we did when we talk about site and soil contamination. You talk about what the market will bear. We discussed that continually in here. Doesn't the price of the land reflect what the market will bear with regard to the cost of this land to the project? Knowing that there's significant remediation involved, isn't that reflected in what the city's going to sell the land to the developer for?
I don't know.
It's not stumped.
Sure.
That
the purchase price is basically based on either a 2006 or 2007 appraisal. I don't know. I'm sure there's some reflection of that in there. I would also suspect it's not the entire reflection of those environmental costs in that purchase price. It is. It's a price that I don't think is substantially discounted.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Brent, thank you.
Thank you.
I know we veered a little off target, but you gave us permission to do that.
Sure.
And,
I'm happy to do so.
but I think this discussion is going to continue at the next meeting for that particular deferral.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these are some questions that we're kind of hearing and I think need to be addressed.
Yeah, we'll do our best to address them for you.
Getting back to the boundaries, would anybody have any questions with Brent regarding the boundaries of this one? If not, you're free to go, Brent.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to address item number 17?
Time to go.
Craig Lloyd, the developer's here. Craig, good to see you.
Craig Lloyd, Light Companies, 101 South Reed. And I'm just here to answer some of your questions. If you had some, I will make a couple comments. We have done quite a bit of work on estimating the cost of the development. Not that that has anything to do with what we're talking about, but we got a way on that. The other part is that when this RFP went out in 2006-07, we were told that we had to develop from Maine to Phillips. We have done a considerable amount of work on Maine to get to this point on Phillips, even with 2 years of some people call it depression, some people call it a recession, some just says a pause in the time. But whatever it is, we're here today. The estimates were all put together through stacks of soil tests that we've done. Also, many thousands of dollars of engineering to try to figure out how to drain. I've heard everything from 25 acres to 1,100 acres that drains down into that corner. And It is what it is. I just know that we had about 5.5 feet of water in the basement of Larson a couple years ago because nobody thought through the whole process, and I don't want that to happen again. The question was, would you pay this, your land price that you're paying for this, is it the same as it would be otherwise? I believe the land price is $12.56 for residential housing. Now, we've developed a little bit of housing in this community, and the highest we've ever paid is $3.10 for this similar type of site, and that's part of the process of going through a TIF process. And would we build the same type of building that was predicated when we put our RFP together back in 2007 till today? You can't afford to do that because they required underground parking for as much of the site as you possibly can. The money that the city went and spent is only for the first 4 feet. Doesn't go down 11.5 to 12 feet. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but all that beautiful green grass on the east side of Phillips Avenue, you can't plant a tree on it because it's that heavily contaminated. So you have some opportunities down there, and that goes from even putting the sewer system in. You have a lot of environmental issues to go even to finish the sewer system, to finish the water system. Filtering all the water that you're doing that. You can't just put it into the storm sewer. You have to filter it, and then you have to pay a tapping fee to the city for filtering that water for as long as it ever takes.
But Craig, we're filtering water now in developments that are coming off.
You're not having to go through the process of filtering the water and paying a tapping fee to pay the water to go into your sewer system to take out to the dump, other than the downtown area, I believe so. So there's a lot of things that goes on in the downtown that doesn't go into a lot of other parts of town, is all I'm trying to say.
Craig, there was been a comment made that without approval of this TIF, this is not a project that could stand on its own 2 feet. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and we've built this type of building before, so it isn't like we're just experimenting with this type of building. And the cost on this building is substantially greater for some of the things I just went through, and the land cost is a big item. We got into this project 6.5, 7 years ago. There was 5 of us when we got into it. There's 2 of us left, and it's become more of a love than a good business model, maybe. But we would like to finish the project to this point. But if you told me to build this exact building the way that we are asked to build the building, we couldn't build it without the TIF.
Am I hearing, do you feel in a normal business transaction, is the city out of line with what they want for this ground based on some of the stuff you're describing to me right now?
Apparently it was appraised back then. Apparently in 2006 we agreed to that. We're trying to live up with that agreement. I'm just told you the highest price we've paid for underground parking in apartment buildings. And we can go out on 57th Street and stuff we did out there. We just bought some land on 85th Street in Minnesota. That was about $2.20. Stuff we just bought behind the old Donegal apartments out there. We just paid $3.10 a square foot for land. It is more expensive to do business downtown. And if you don't like that program, don't come here. You also get a little bit higher rent, but it's not that great of a difference.
Just personally, these TIFs are asking the taxpayers of the City of Sioux Falls to help subsidize this project to the tune of roughly $277,000 a year. The cost for school, county, and city does not go away.
Okay.
In other words, the 16 cents the city gets to provide water, or streets, police, fire department, that's money they're not going to achieve, and obviously the city feels that's worth the investment. And I'm not saying it isn't. I think it's a heck of a nice looking project.
Let's just go back 6 years ago, or 5 years ago.
Mr. Chair, I hate to cut Mr.
sorry.
Lloyd off and you off, but we're back into item 16, which has been deferred. Are we going to vote on that? Or are we going to keep this discussion going to vote on that?
Craig a little,
Or are we going
heads up on
to,
next
because
month's
we're going to go
meeting.
over this next week, or next month also.
But I don't want to get to the point that we're sitting here next month with questions in front of us that we can't answer. So I think some of it's legitimate in the fact that I want them to know exactly what we want to know from them next month.
Right.
So,
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the point is that we already voted to defer. I think we ought to stay true to that. Be on task and get this item off.
I think in my quest to accommodate the petitioners is why we opened it up to that. I think Brent wanted to talk about that.
A dead horse.
Any other questions for Craig in regards to the boundaries?
Thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Any other, anyone here? Anyone else here that would like to address item number 17? Seeing none, I'd look for commission, I'd look for commission action.
I move approval.
We have a motion to approve.
No, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
yes, I'll discuss. It is unique in the fact that TIFs are always brought to us and discussed in one package and voted on as two separate things. The boundaries are voted on, the actual TIF itself. This is a unique situation in the fact that we received this information yesterday with the hope that we could vote on it today. And I think clearly as a commission we didn't feel comfortable under those parameters. So I think the fact that we've entertained the boundaries and feel comfortable determining the boundaries is completely adequate and within the realm of what we can and probably should do tonight. I do want to say that I think a lot of discussion is going to be coming forward next month with regard to the actual expenses around it, and so I don't want us to be sitting here next month saying that we didn't have the adequate information to make that decision. So I think we are being prudent in saying that there is a lot to be worked out in this TIF. I think, Kenny, you touched on the fact that we've seen a lot of these within the last 3 to 5 years, and a change in structure and how we offer them and why we offer them. So I think it warrants a lot of conversation because, as you said, we are discussing a forbearance of taxpayer money in lieu of getting a project done. Not saying that we don't disagree with that, because clearly we have, because this is the 18th TIF that we're voting on. So I do think we're fair in lying everything out there so there aren't any unanswered questions when we come to talk about the details of this TIF next month.
Thank you, Jesse. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Number 17 passes. Number 18.
Steve. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Steve Randall. I'll be representing planning staff on item 18 and others this evening. Item 18 is a request for a conditional use permit coming from the Pro Partnership for Madison Street off-premise signage. They're requesting that an off-premise sign be allowed within 600 feet of a school. A conditional use permit is required. It's a C2 general commercial district. It's about half an acre of property in size. And our compatibility rating is 3 because of the proximity of residential property to this commercial use. That is, the proposed use may have potential conflicts with the adjacent uses, which can be mitigated. through project design, traffic parking, and other external effects being directed away from the lower intensity uses. Landscaping, buffering, and screening should be employed to minimize negative effects. The applicant has provided us with a site plan that locates the proposed sign with setbacks, size, meeting the requirements of off-premise signage in the zoning ordinance, and that section is referred to in your staff report. Signage plan indicates a maximum 288 square foot, 40 foot high at a location along the west property line with an east-west sign facing setback 22 feet from the street among existing trees and immediately adjacent to the west property line. A single pole support is indicated, but materials, colors, and lighting are not indicated, and other potential design features are not identified, such as electronics, extensions, and eye catchers referred to in the signage ordinance. The applicant may wish to address that this evening in response to your questions. The applicant is not contracted with a particular sign company for the design, therefore it's a minimal design just to achieve approval of a location and the fact that it can be put in. The sign ordinance, just for your information, does not regulate sign content. Therefore, the requirement for conditional use within 600 feet of a school. We've asked the applicant to contact the school, get their comments, present them to you this evening. Staff has not received any comments from the school itself. Because the application has provided clarity to indicate the location, nature, and extent of the work proposed, and the sign, as far as staff is concerned, is not visible from school property, staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit. That concludes staff report. We've not received any calls.
Nothing on this one, Steve. Would anyone have any questions for Steve in regards to item number 18? If not, thank you, Steve. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to address item number 18?
Kirby Prohl, 6305 South Audie Drive, Sioux Falls. Just any questions?
Was there anything Steve addressed to us? Anything else we should know in regards to this, Steve?
No, I don't think so. There was a billboard sign on West Sioux Hardware,
Okay.
right across the street, and they took it down about 3 years ago. And we just thought that with Madison getting busier and whatnot, that we would put a sign up.
Thank you, Kirby.
Excuse me, is this sign, it's going to be lighted, right?
Yeah, we probably, we don't have a sign company yet, but, you know, we'll have to get a permit through the city, and they'll have to approve it. So I don't think it'll be anything out of the normal. We just wanted to have the permit ourselves as opposed to a sign company putting the sign there, and then they have the permit, and then they always control it. So that's why we thought we would do it ourselves.
Okay, well, you know, I guess I was just wondering, just for the neighbors around you, whether it was lighted, if the neighbors know that this thing is going to be a flashing neon sign or what it is, because you got some, do the neighbors know what kind of sign that you're going to have? You had any meeting with them to say, hey, I'm going to put up a sign here and it's going to be a flashing sign, it's going to be a neon sign, it's just going to be a billboard where I put the stuff up?
Signs on the corners of the property letting them know that we're having a meeting, you know, that that's going to be brought before you folks,
Okay.
I guess.
Any other questions for Kirby? Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to address this particular item? Seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, I have one kind of interesting question for Steve if he'd come back up. Help me out. I need to know if you can help me with the definition of visual pollution and eye catchers.
It has to do with, I don't know if you've seen some of the signs that have had those kinds of things happen. Usually it's out in Las Vegas someplace, or, you know, where there's a smokestack and there's smoke coming out. And we actually had one of those in town, and somebody called the fire department and they went running over there, and, you know, it's a distraction, it's a pollution.
It distracts your attention from driving down the road.
Yeah, something that would really you know, pinwheels flying and things moving, and we don't have a design for that sign, so I can't say that that's not possible. It is possible for you this evening, if you would like, to place conditions on approval of the conditional use permit.
I don't know that I'm in a position to be qualified to put the conditions on, because frankly, what might be considered to be distractive to somebody may not be to someone else.
That's true.
When the petitioner comes down to get a permit, Steve, that's something that's done at the building permit inspection department?
At the zoning counter, yes. Zoning issues the permit for the sign.
And after this meeting, the size will be approved, but if they had some concerns about lighting or such like that, is that something they take a look at, or is it all pretty standard?
No, they take a look at it, and it is a standard review process, and Jason can probably explain it better than I can, because he's probably looked at it in zoning. But off-premise signs by ordinance are approved for size and height. Anything other that is considered in the conditional use permit would be stated in a decision letter, and they'll pull that up, look at it. But if it turned out to be an electronic billboard and there are no conditions for approval on that or restrictions, it would be allowed to go forward.
But there's significant sign code to address those same items within the sign code.
There are, and I've indicated or included some of that verbiage in your staff report.
So to somewhat clarify what you're asking, there's additional code around all that too.
We don't make that decision here anyway.
Correct.
Right. There are standards in place in the ordinance which try to control those kinds of things. I think for you this evening, if you were to see something unusual in the placement, the location, or the application of an off-premise sign to this particular property, you would be able to put conditions on that.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions for Steve? Did Steve's comments bring up any other questions for anyone else in the audience? If not, Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make motion to approve item 18.
We have a motion to approve item 18.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, all in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed? Motion passes. Number 18 passes. That brings us to item, that was item 17 passes. It brings us to item 18.
That's 18.
It was 18. The staff report was in error.
Starting to see double here, Steve.
Look at the top page.
Early meeting, running late.
So that brings us to item, oh, wait a minute, 19's been deferred.
No.
No,
20.
20 is deferred.
20's been deferred.
We got 19 now.
So item number 19, Steve.
Thank you. This is an application for Dog Days Kennel. It's a conditional use permit. The applicant is Victoria Schroeder. Is that Schroeder? Schroeder. Gil Haugen and Gil Haugen Construction are the owners of the facility. It is currently being used as a church in the front part of the building. The applicant would like to remodel the back half of the building to put in a dog kennel and occupy a portion of that at that address. It's about a 2-acre site, so it's a larger site. They would share the parking, and they would share a number of other things, the trash receptacles, things like that. Because it is a developed area, fully developed with parking and building and landscaping, we have given it a compatibility rating of 3 because of the proximity of a nursing home to the north of the facility. That is that we have a potential incompatibility that can be addressed through buffers, landscapings, distances, other factors Staff has noted that to the north there is going to be a future extension of 49th Street, which is a 100-foot right-of-way, along with improvements. The nursing home is set back further distance than that. So staff, excuse me, was not too concerned about the distance factor there, but we were concerned that the nursing home be approached for their comments, as well as the church, and we included that in your staff report as a recommendation for deferral until we get those comments. As late as 5 o'clock today, the comments have been coming in. So I'm going to depend on the applicant to reply or to present those comments to you, which is typical for this type of application in a sensitive neighborhood. And also the responses that they have also received, comments that they've received from those neighbors. Just to summarize, I think the church indicated to staff over the telephone that they might be concerned about noise coming from the animals in the other part of the building, and also the fact that they intend to put in a daycare center at their facility, which would have an outdoor play area on the same side of the building as the outdoor dog area. The applicant has talked to the church about that, and they can indicate to you their response. The concerns that were addressed by the nursing home had to do with odor and noise, were their concerns. And again, the applicant has discussed those with the nursing home and can indicate to you their response. Other than that, we've had no calls from other neighbors in the area. In your report and on the screen, you can see the size of the facility, the number of dogs that would be brought there. The applicant has done a good job of explaining their business as to how they would control traffic, the hours of business, the care and handling of the animals, both inside and outside. And so I will leave it to the applicant to further explain that to you or respond to your questions. And that concludes staff report.
Any questions for Steve? Steve, and maybe you said and I didn't hear, but staff is recommending deferral on this. Is staff still recommending deferral, or are you saying?
The staff report indicated deferral at the time that the report was written because we had no comments from the neighbors. We do have the comments from the neighbors now, but still, as far as the neighbors are concerned, they are discussing those comments with the applicant, so staff is not changing its recommendation, but leaving it to you to listen to the applicant's response to the neighbors' concerns and make a decision on that basis.
All right, thank you, Steve. Any questions from commissioners to Steve? Thank you. Is the petitioner here?
Good evening. I'm Nicole Schroeder, and I'll speak first just to give you a little idea about Dog Days itself, the proposed business to go into that building. The building, again, as Steve mentioned, is owned by Gil Hogan, and Falls Church does occupy the south side of that building. This is the other side of it. It will address the sound issue, but that is written into the lease, or will be written into the lease terms on soundproofing the wall in between. Little kind of overview of how activities would happen during the day. So this outdoor play area that's proposed is a small area in the northwest corner of the lot attached to the building, separated from the Falls Church, the adjoining tenant, by a couple bay docks, the overhead doors, that kind of thing. So there is quite a bit of distance in between there, between the two kind of outdoor sites where they're proposing they may put in a daycare. The activities that happen, so the dogs would be housed in the south side of our space, only overnight, or at various times of the day. Basically, they'll be coming out to play, and they'll be going outdoors to use the bathroom. These are not rescued animals. They're not up for adoption. They're owned pets. Therefore, think of it like a pet hotel. So they're house trained that. So we're allowing them to go outside. but there is a large indoor play area where they'll be most of the time. So to address the outdoor issue is that they'll be outside supervised. A limited number of animals, like dogs, will be outside at any one given time. They will be supervised at all times while outside, as well as inside in the play area. So they'll be left unattended when they are locked in their kennel area, and that's the time that they'll be unsupervised. So.
But the kennel's fully enclosed within the confines of the building.
Yes,
Yeah.
there will be no housing of animals outside at any time. They will be supervised only out there to go to the bathroom. Then they'll be escorted back in, and they'll play in the inside play area and do most of their running on the inside, as that's kind of a small space. The trash or the waste from the animals will be handled. We'll have. I don't even want to say daily, it's as it happens, and then it goes into a trash receptacle that's contained and allowing for the trash pickup. Right now we'll say once a week, up to 2 times a week in warm weather, if volumes become high, that kind of thing. Again, I talked about the soundproofing of that wall in between the 2 tenants. That's been discussed. And then I'll introduce Victoria Schroeder, who conducted face-to-face meetings with the adjacent property, our business owners, as well as Falls Church, the shared tenant in that building. So she could address kind of some of the specific questions, give you a little overview of those face-to-face meetings that she had, and then the comments that have been coming in last minute with Steve, and that conversation has happened between the 2 of them. So I'll introduce Victoria at this time and let her give you a brief overview and address any questions you may have.
Wait till we might have some, wait a minute,
Oh,
Nicole,
sure.
we might have some questions
Sure.
for you. Let me ask the commissioners. Does anyone have a question for Nicole?
I do, Nicole.
Sure.
So this is going to be a daycare, so it's going to be a drop-off and a pickup daily, but you are going to offer some boarding as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yes, there'll be both services will be available. So we will have windows for public traffic to pick up. So I can't tell you exactly what those windows are, but an hour or 2 in the morning, an hour or 2 in the evening, 7 days a week. So it's limited traffic coming through there.
Nicole, when I read staff report, they talked about a size of up to 140 dogs. Do you envision that? Or, I mean, I don't think there's 140 kennels here.
No, there's not. In some cases, we will allow for, we will be screening all dogs for aggression. We'll have limitations. They have to have proper vaccinations. They have to come in for, if there's any question, a temperament screening before they're there. To address your question, Mr. Dunlap, they could be in the same kennel if it's, for example, I have 2 dogs. They like to be with each other all the time. So we will allow in a larger kennel for the 2 of them to end up together to sleep together.
That's how you come up to the potential.
Yeah, there could
at
be
one time
more
140.
animals than kennels potentially if we allow for double occupancy, basically.
Is this space apparently not currently finished? Is this just a big...
And Victoria could perhaps address that a little bit more, the history of the building. It's my understanding that when the church first rented that space, they had rented both spaces, so the entire building. Then they couldn't handle this space that we're talking about. Well, in the beginning, the plans were they were going to expand, they were going to put in other services, all of that. So they approached Gil Hogan with that and had kind of some initial work done. So cement laid, the initial floor, some where the bathrooms may be located, all of that. But it is an open space. There's some finishing, like the floor is finished.
So you'll have to come in and do some finish.
There will be some
to get
finish.
this to accommodate
Yes,
the
yep, and that's the map that you see up there. That's our proposed finish. Some of those walls are in there. Basically, the one on the bottom half of the screen is the shared wall between the church and our half of it. And then the wall kind of going through the middle, most of that is existing at this point. The church was utilizing that side and was renting that space for a while.
And I ask this because I honestly don't know. I don't have a pet. Do you need a permit to do this from the health department or any?
We do not need a permit to run the business. We need the conditional use permit to allow the dogs outside at any time. So being these are family-owned pets, they're house-trained, all of that, they're used to going, for the most part, outside to go to the bathroom. So we want to have the capability to allow them to go out to that area to continue their normal habits. So we're not compromising their behavior when they go home.
Is there any entity that will occasionally check up on your business and see if you're meeting health and safety codes?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I ask that, I don't know either. I guess if I were going to bring my dog there, I could certainly go in and see what it looks like and either feel comfortable with it or not.
Most definitely. And the air exchange system that we have to put in, we're working with Gil in the construction and those proposed plans. And is it the city? Yeah. The city has required some additional, I can't even talk to the terminology, but the air exchange in there be amped up a bit so that there's better air movement in there. So there are little things like that, but no, it's not like the health department comes in and does an inspection. It's based on our customers coming in and trusting us to leave their pets with us and trusting they won't get sick.
Will this be your business?
Yes, it will be a small business, yes. And it's myself.
Have you done this before?
I have not done this, no. It's myself and my two sisters.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions for Nicole? We'll pick on your sisters for a while now.
Please do. They'd need it.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Schroeder, and as Nicole said, I can answer any questions that you might have about the meetings that I had with the surrounding businesses. As Nicole said, I did go and meet with the businesses surrounding the area. I spoke with the church. I spoke with Lance Wrench on November 1st and just kind of discussed what our plans were. He was semi-aware of it already. Just discussed what we planned on doing in that space and some additional items we might want to share with him. His concern, of course, was noise between the two spaces. And we did thoroughly discuss how the owner of the building is actually going to go through and do some soundproofing. And then if that doesn't contain the sound enough, we are actually going in and building another wall to contain all the sound. So Lance has been made aware of that from myself as well as Gil. I did speak with Gil Haugen this afternoon, and he also has spoken with Lance about soundproofing the space in between. What else? As for the nursing home location, I spoke with Chad Breedenbach at Southridge Healthcare also on November 1st. His couple of concerns that I received via email through Steve were the odor issues and the noise issues. How I addressed those with Chad was that as the dogs really are never going to be an issue when they're inside. It's a big concrete building. There's limited windows. There's really no chance of hearing them outside when they're indoors. And as Nicole stated, the majority of the time they will be indoors. As they go outside to this area that we have set up from this fenced-in area for bathroom use, they'll always be supervised. There'll be one of us out there at all times with the animals. We're not allowing more than 10 dogs outside at a time. The area is not real big. It's big enough, but it's not real big for it to have more than 10 dogs out there at one time. Plus, we really want to keep the noise control down. So if you have less, there's less chance of all the dogs interacting with each other and causing noise outside. As for the odor issue, I did speak with Chad about that as well. And Nicole kind of touched on that as well, that we will be cleaning it up as it happens. We can't have any messes available for dogs to run through. We don't want to create any bigger messes than what we need to. So we'll be picking it up immediately, and then it goes into a covered can. And I spoke with Lance at the church, and we discussed sharing the dumpster facility. Right now, I think he said he has it picked up once a week, I believe. And so we discussed either keeping it that way or bumping it up to twice a week and then sharing the cost on that. One other part that Lance had also mentioned was his daycare facility. This actually just happened this afternoon. As the church potentially puts in a daycare in that front, their space, their half of the building, they did propose having an outdoor area for the children to play in. And I called this afternoon and spoke with Robin, their office manager. And as Lance wasn't available, he was actually in a meeting. So Robin informed me that that area will be fenced in. And I think Lance's concern was that the children would be approaching the fence where the dogs would be. I guess I don't think it'll be a concern just because of the fact that our dogs will be fenced and the children will be in a fenced-in area. And there'll obviously be supervision on both ends. So I believe I've addressed the questions both from the nursing home and from the church. Do you have any additional questions about how we're running the business or anything like that?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
How about the VFW? Did you talk with them?
The VFW, we did not. I guess in that case, we didn't feel that they were close enough to potentially get the noise, I guess, from that. We're going to be, I'm sorry, go ahead.
They're a little different entity. They're a come and go type of thing. I'm just wondering if they were contacted.
No, I had not contacted them. Because our outdoor area is on the west side of the building and they were kind of completely kitty corner in the opposite direction, I did not actually speak with them. I did, however, go and speak with Sue Spencer Matz at Spencer Furniture and also Mark Kozel at Scott's Lumber. And they both agreed that it shouldn't be an issue and for the noise factor and for our business going in that location.
Victoria, you and your sisters have went to a lot of work. And I say this not being a pet owner. I envision this 140 dogs. One starts barking, and what little experience I've had, it seems like they all start barking.
Yes, that is typically the case where one starts and then it kind of causes a chain reaction. To cut down on that noise factor, like I said, inside the concrete building, I don't really foresee that being a problem. If they do start barking, even if we had all these dogs barking at once, you still shouldn't be able to hear them outside, and they shouldn't be able to hear them on the church side, being that we're going to go through and soundproof that wall thoroughly. And the outside issue, like I said, keeping it down to no more than 10 dogs outside at one time, that should actually cut down on that issue as well. It's a lot easier to quiet down 10 dogs outside, so as opposed to having more than that outside at one time.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick comment on that too, maybe even to further address that indoors, they are separated into 3 different rooms. So they're small, there's a small room, a medium room, and a large room. And the manufacturer that we're working with on these kennels will be coming to Sioux Falls once everything gets rolling. And they'll be designing the layout of the kennels, not like you see here in my simple plan, but to reduce noise across. So they're not looking at each other. They're not, they're not in wire cages. These aren't wire kennels we're putting in. They're paneled, not see-through. So they're not directly looking at each other, trying to start something, basically. So they're separated. We've accounted for and we're talking through how to face the kennels so that there's noise reduction and other options in there to reduce noise even inside the building.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, just a second, Nicole.
I just have a question about the fenced-in area for the outdoor play area.
Yes.
Can you tell me the type of fencing that you are planning?
Absolutely. We're planning on a 6-foot fence, and I believe we're just going to do a chain link 6-foot fence, and just kind of the standardized fencing will be out there, but definitely 6 foot to kind of accommodate for the bigger type animals. There'll be one gate in there, of course, so that we can get a lawnmower in there in the summertime. So there'll be one just gate on the outside that will lock from the inside, and nobody will be able to get into that or out of that except for us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Victoria.
Absolutely.
There's another sister there. Did she have anything she wanted to add?
Which words are out of your mouth?
Is there anyone else here? I'm wondering, I see the city attorney is here tonight. Let's put him to work. I wonder if you'd come up and visit with us for just a second.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office.
Good evening, David. I still have this picture in my mind of all the dogs starting to barking at the same time, and we've done a lot of work here to try and deaden the noise. What happens at the city level if the church, if a neighbor calls to make a complaint?
We do have noise ordinances that are enforced by the health department based on decibel levels, and I cannot tell you off the top of my head if 140 dogs all barking at the same time would reach those threshold levels or not, Mr. Chairman.
I have heard stories of neighbors calling on a neighbor's dog. I've had no experience with it. I think typically, have you, Denny? And maybe you can help me. Is the dog owner given a warning?
It can work a lot of different ways, but the first time is usually you talk to the neighbor and try to work it out with the neighbor. And if that doesn't work out, then you have other recourse. We've never gotten to that point, but yeah, it happens all over town.
And I asked the question not that I'm a neighbor, but I just want these ladies to be aware of the fact of what potentially could happen.
Certainly, and I used to practice in, I used to practice in Pierre, South Dakota, and prosecuted numerous barking dog violations under the Pierre ordinance, so I'm well aware of it, but I frankly have other attorneys here doing that for our office, but certainly that does happen too, Mr. Chairman, but I guess I was reading your question more of 140 at once. Is there a specific
Could
ordinance?
be 5, could be 10.
Could be 5, could be whatever, sure.
I don't know what could or couldn't happen, I guess is my only point. And I think these young ladies seem very earnest and got a business plan they want to try and do here. But a potential difficulty could be neighborhood complaint, limited as it is.
Yes, I think you've identified it correctly.
Do they have a fallback position if it were to happen? I just want them to give that a little thought. But
okay,
David, thank you. Any other questions for David?
Do you mind if I address that for 1 second?
Nicole, okay, we'll allow it.
On the decibel level, we have discussed what the levels will be, and we are looking into that with Gil Hogan as we design the layout and kind of the fill for the soundproofing of the walls and all of that. And he has the specifics, and we're just at a point where we're saying we need to know if we can move forward if he wants to put more time into this. So we are accounting for that. He has kind of the specs and all of that and the expertise to talk more to that. But he does know the max capacity that we can put in there, and he has all of that, all of the specs on how to get that noise level reduced. So
They're certainly a good construction company, and they know their business.
Well, and he probably already also has a second interest in this also to make sure that it does work.
Exactly.
Is 2 tenants.
Right. And it is in our, right now we have an intent to lease that we've signed, and it is in that intent to lease that we must discuss with Falls Church. They have to be fine with the noise, and you know, Gil has stated, I will go so far, but if we need to go further, that's going to be on you guys, and we've agreed to that. So it's all in the terms of the lease where we're really thinking about the sound issue. You know, I'm not as concerned about the outside because it'll be limited. I, in January, don't want to stand outside in 30 below weather with dogs for hours, so I want them to hurry up and get back in. So
the whole area is going to be heated and air conditioned. I mean,
in the inside, yep. Yes. So we're really concentrating on the sound reduction within the building itself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to address this particular item? Seeing none, Chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve item number 19.
We have an item, we have a motion. Would there be a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Well, I think it's a unique concept. I think, I know they have them all over the country, and I know there's a couple, I think, smaller facilities here in Sioux Falls. I think, it's an interesting area of town. I think you're probably in the right place for what it is you're going to do, because there's not a ton of residential down there and mostly commercial, and I think it fits the zoning, and be interesting to see how it all turns out. And I am a dog owner of 2 dogs, the small kind.
Put them in the same kennel.
They are in the same kennel.
Yeah, they just love you when you come home.
Right.
Any other discussion? Any other thoughts? Seeing none, all in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes. Good luck, ladies.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for adjournment.
Already? We have a motion, no second. Oh, there's a second. All in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed?